Hello! Today we're going to talk about preparing for our first cooking lab. And today's topic is food safety. Have you ever gotten sick from something you ate? Most people call it food poisoning, but another name for it is a foodborne illness. And what that basically means is an illness or something that could make you sick was born or living in your food when you put it into your mouth, and it made you sick. And whether you call it foodborne illness or food poisoning, there are only three ways in which your food becomes contaminated. And contaminated means that there's something in there that there shouldn't be, and that if you were to ingest it or bring it into your body, it could make you sick. And those three ways in which food becomes contaminated are biological, chemical, or physical. Now, the biological one is the one that's most invisible to us. We can't usually smell it, we can't usually taste it. But this happens when a virus or a bacteria is living inside the food we put in our bodies. And the two most common that you will hear on the news from time to time is Salmonella or E. coli. Now, Salmonella can be found in chickens. And because it can be found in chickens, it can also be found in their products, meaning it can be found in eggs. And E. coli is most commonly found in ground meat. But because sometimes we use manure or the poo from cows to fertilize our plants, we can get E. coli from lettuce if it wasn't rinsed or washed properly after being in the field. Luckily, here at our school, we aren't using cow manure. We're using other types of fertilizer. Now, if you want to avoid a biological contamination, whether it be a virus or a bacteria, always start with good hand washing. And then make sure that if you are sick or not feeling well, you stay out of the kitchen. Always make sure that the kitchen equipment you're using is washed properly, and avoid the cross-contamination. Cross-contamination is a serve-safe word, and cross-contamination is a word that you should know when you're cooking in the kitchen. And cross-contamination just means that what you have done is you've taken something that could be contaminated, and you've touched something that wasn't contaminated. So an example of this would be if you touched raw chicken, which could be contaminated, and then you picked up your sandwich to eat for lunch without washing your hands. You also want to avoid the liquids from raw ingredients as well, like chicken or meat. And then avoid eating or touching other people's food. You want to make sure that your hands only touch as much food as it's absolutely necessary possible to complete the recipe. And when it's done, you want to make sure that you're only touching the food that you're going to eat. Also, make sure that you avoid foods that have been sitting out for longer than 4 hours. So if you go to a picnic or a party for a birthday, and there's been food that's been sitting out since noon, after 4 o'clock, you really should avoid eating that food. The other food contaminants are chemical and physical. And while these are common, they're not that common here at our school. The chemical contamination is difficult to have here at our school because we have professional companies come in and spray pesticides, and they make sure that they aren't using it in the cooking areas. But when you're at home, make sure that the chemicals you're using for cleaning in your kitchen are safe for the kitchen and for food areas. And when it comes to physical contaminations, this is one of the reasons why we pull our hair back if we have long hair. Make sure that we don't have fake nails on if we're working in the kitchen. And always make sure that we remove any plastics or materials that our food comes wrapped in when we buy it from the store. But a physical contamination can be any of those things that are physically digested into our body, and those are the ones that we typically find when we're eating. If you've ever had a meal at a restaurant and you've got it comped or free because there was hair or metal or plastic, chances are that was a physical contaminant that you could have possibly eaten and gotten sick from. Now, how does food become contaminated? Well, one of four ways. It's either not cooked completely, left out too long on the counter, the person who was preparing your food was dirty, or it was touching dirty equipment being used in that kitchen. So we want to avoid these things. And the best way we do is with these four golden rules of food safety. Always clean properly. Separate your cooked and uncooked foods. Cook your foods completely and cool them to the correct temperature after preparing them if they're not going to be eaten immediately.